Hello, students. This is a revision of the essay on the abolition of English department by Gugi Watiago. Gugi Watiago was born in Kenya in the year 1938. Gugi Watiago is a multifaceted intellectual. He's a novelist, essayist, dramatist, journalist, and academician. He founded the Gikuyu language journal Muthiri. He's a political activist who fought against Kenyan dictatorship through the power of word. He rejected his Christian faith and English language itself and started to write only in Kikuyu, his native language, and Swahili. He resumed his Kenyan identity by adopting his fully Kikuyu name, Gugi Watiago, and denying his previous colonial name. He had embarked on an innovative theatrical play, I Will Marry When I Want, in order to encourage the participation of the audience and the demystification of the theatrical alienation. The dictatorship pursued it as a threat and he was imprisoned and later exiled. During exile, he taught in many American universities such as Yale and New York University. At the moment, he teaches English and comparative literature at the University of California. Among his most famous novels, dealing with the themes such as tolerance, rebellion, and peace, there is The River Between, published in the year 1986, which describes the Mau Mau Revolution and the unhappy relationship between Christians and non Christians. A Grain of Wheat, which was published in 1967, was essential for his development as an African author. In this work, he explicitly made clear his political view, and after which he converted exclusively writing in African languages. He bravely encourages awareness on Kenyan political situation in memoirs such as Detained, a writer's prison diary, or Dreams in a Time of War, a childhood memoir published in 2010. His essays, on the other hand, passionately express his attachment to his land and his language with the aim of spreading consciousness. Remarkable collections are Homecoming, published in the year 1972, Decolonizing the Mind, The Politics of Language and African Literature, published in 1986, and An African Renaissance, published in 2009. Gugi Watiago argues for the necessity of realignment of educational institutions so as to eliminate internally forced subordination of African culture. He says newly emerging nations have dismantled colonial institutions because it obstructed transmission of African culture. In the beginning of the essay, Gogi gives a vivid picture of the English department in England. English department arose in the late 20th century. Before that, the dominant language was Greek and Latin, mainly focusing on elements of rhetoric and philology. English arose as a discipline to foster an appreciation of culture in the less educated classes who were not trained in Greek and Latin. English was also enmeshed and designed to instill national pride. Therefore, It was more of a language than literature. The teaching of English language and literature in the department was also a prominent part of the administration of the British Empire in many of its colonies around globe. Gugi confronted the leaders of the University of Nairobi for their bias and preference for English language and literature texts in the Department of English, which he signaled as a total lack of interest in African literature. He questioned the value of English department in African context. In the year 1968, Gugi and his colleagues co-authored a letter entitled On the Abolition of English Department. The abolition of the English department to a Department of African Literature and Languages is not merely a change of name. The paper highlights that they want to establish the centrality of Africa in the department. This is just logical in a sense that being free from colonizer means that a country is free to rebuild what was lost during colonization process and placing the real African into the center. It would make the younger generation after colonization to think like Africans and for them to experience and know more about their roots. The English department is a crucial example of the staying power of colonial influence that governs the development of their students. This influence on education is a hindrance to claiming the independence of a country, as it will always redirect the students to imbibing the culture, tradition, and consciousness of their colonizers even after colonization period. It limits the students' chances of knowing their roots. Thus, it will only produce young students who are knowledgeable about their colonies but ignorant about their roots. The abolition of the English department also opens avenues to place traditional arts and literature of Africa into the curriculum, since they are promoting Africanism within Africa. It is a must to look back into the pre-colonial literary text, the traditional oral arts. Traditional oral art is a living tradition that at present time there are songs being sung in political rallies, churches, etc. The good thing about including the traditional arts is the interlinking of multidisciplinary outlook in studying this form of literature, as it will not only concentrate on literature but also on music, linguistics, sociology, anthropology, history, psychology, religion, and philosophy. Moreover, familiarity of oral culture can offer new techniques and strategies and could foster attitudes of mind characterized by willingness to experiment with new forms. However, they deny that the inclusion of oral literature in modern African literature will not replace the subject. Rather, it will be a supplement of the subject. The modern African literature is evidently centered on everything African. Thus, they considered the following as the scope of the subject. First, African novel written in French and English. 2. The African poetry written in French and English with relevant translations of works written in Afrikaans, in Portuguese and Spanish. 3. The Caribbean novel and poetry. The scope intensifies the need to place Africa at the heart of the study. I think it is to empower the youth knowledge on how great their culture is compared to the culture imposed by colonizers. Lastly, the abolition of English department and establishment of the Department of African Literature and Language offers an interlinking between Department of African Literature and Languages among other departments for them to concentrate on aspects of African thought, not only in literature and language, but to the owning of Africa and Africans as well. However, Gugi's idea of abolishing English language will not work in the same manner in other colonized countries. These rejections of English have by no means proven popular, as the vast body of post colonial literature in English testifies. In tackling the issue of English, we must never forget to take into account the specific linguistic condition in different locations. In the Caribbean, for example, English cannot be so easily censured. Along with other European languages such as Dutch or Spanish, English became one of the dominant languages in the region during colonial period. Indigenous languages perished, and the indigenous people also perished, while the languages of the African slaves shipped up across the Atlantic to work on plantations were discouraged by colonial authorities. Today, English remains one of the predominant languages of education and power. Consequently, it is more widely spoken among population than English in India and is less easy to reject. In contrast to the situation Gugi describes in Kenya, it is also difficult to recover an indigenous language in the Caribbean to which one belongs when the native language has been destroyed and most frequently spoken languages were brought from overseas, from Europe, Africa, and